the city council in Evanston, Illinois, is dealing with the issue of reparations. Okay, so welcome to the African History Network show right here on 910 AM Superstation, the Future Radio. I'm your host, Brother Michael M. Hotep. It is Sunday, March 7th, 2021, and we are live. Hope everybody's doing well. As I was saying, it's been a very, very busy, it was a busy week and been a busy weekend. And I was doing a lot of research preparing for today's show, going back through editing the shows, editing the video from the shows from this past week. So today we were rebroadcasting our show from Thursday. Okay, we were rebroadcasting our show from March 3rd also, where we talked about the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act that passed the House of Representatives. But I saw this story dealing with reparations in Evanston, Illinois. I saw the story back on March 1st, 2021. ABC News and the ABC Channel 7 affiliate in Chicago ran stories dealing with this. And I heard about this some months ago and talked about this on this show some months ago. But now this is being implemented. So they talk about how the first U.S. city to fund reparations for Black residents is making amends. How the first U.S. city to fund reparations for Black residents is making amends. And the city of Evanston, Illinois, is dealing with the issue of redlining. We've talked about redlining here on this show before, but they're dealing with the issue of redlining and how it impacted African Americans, and they are taking they're taxing revenue from the sale of legal marijuana to provide some type of reparations fund when it comes to buying homes for African Americans. Okay, so we're going to talk about that story, and then you have some people in the community who are not happy with how things are progressing. Oftentimes, it's easier to complain than actually do something about it. But this is monumental. This is the first time something like this has really been tried and this close to actually being implemented in a city in the U.S. Okay, so we know that redlining is a legacy of slavery as well. It comes out of racism and discrimination. And we know the system of redlining was created by the U.S. government. Comes out of the Homeowners Loan Corporation. And the Homeowners Loan Corporation was created about 1933. Redlining goes into effect about 1937. These are government policies. So we'll talk about that story. Then I want to talk some more about the story out of Mississippi, Purvis, Mississippi. Now, we talked about this on our Friday show. Okay. In Mississippi, you have a middle school, Purvis Middle School in Purvis, Mississippi. There was a assignment during Black History Month that asked students to pretend that they were slaves and write a letter to their family back in Africa. Okay. And this assignment is drawing outrage from parents as well as activists. I talked about this on our Friday show, and I said we would discuss it on Sunday when we have more time, because we have 2 hours on our Sunday show. Okay, so we're going to deal with that here. And also, there was an interview that one of the parents of one of the children who was given this assignment did with a local news station. We're going to share that interview with you as well. This was a slave letter writing activity, And this is another slave lesson gone wrong. Now, there was a big article from USA Today. One of the articles I was reading on this cited a big article from USA Today. And this article from USA Today came out March 2nd, 2021. Name of this article from USA Today is Mock Slave Auctions. Mock Slave Auctions, Racist Lessons how U.S. history often traumatizes, dehumanizes Black students. Mock slave auctions, racist lessons, how U.S. history often traumatizes, dehumanizes Black students. Okay, so we're going to talk about this as well, because when you have these mock slave auctions, when you have these different types of slavery lessons, imagine you're a slave and you're writing back home to your people in Africa that you were separated from. This can be traumatizing for African American students, but it can be traumatizing for other students also. And in this extensive article from USA Today, they also talked about the study from the um, Southern Poverty Law Center called "Teaching Hard History: American Slavery." Teaching Hard History: American Slavery. Okay, from the Southern Poverty Law Center. So we'll discuss that as well. Right, and then we know that today is the 56th anniversary of Bloody Sunday. But Bloody Sunday, March 7th, 1965, okay, in Alabama, the Selma to Montgomery March. And this is the first commemoration of Bloody Sunday without John Lewis, without Reverend C.T. Vivian. So we're going to talk some about that, because it was also on today that President Joe Biden signed an executive order promoting voting rights on the 56th anniversary of Bloody Sunday. Joe Biden signs executive order to expand voting access on the 56th anniversary of Bloody Sunday. We know Bloody Sunday was a pivotal point in the fight for the Voting Rights Act of 1965. So we'll discuss that, and we'll talk some about the Senate passing the $1.9 trillion COVID relief bill, which is huge. This includes $1,400 stimulus checks, and they did this with no Republican support. It goes back to the U.S. House of Representatives for them to pass this revised bill. It's not expected that any Republicans will vote for the bill, and it's expected that the House will vote on Tuesday. Okay, so we'll see how that goes, but this is monumental, and this bill, the earned child tax, the child tax credit in the bill will eliminate about 50% of child poverty also. So this is monumental. All right, on the African History Network show, we focus on educating, empowering, and inspiring people of African descent throughout the diaspora and around the world, because right now it's corrects wrong behavior. What you do for yourself, what you do to yourself, and what you allow other people to do to you and get away with is based upon what you think about yourself. What you think about yourself is based upon what you have been taught about yourself. What you've been taught about yourself is based upon everything you've read, heard, and seen about yourself. So when you control the radius of a man or woman's thoughts, you can control the circumference of his or her actions, because the mind can't do or teach what it doesn't know. Now, we deal with a number of different topics here on the African History Network show. We deal with current events in history and politics, economic empowerment, entrepreneurship, relationships, love, sex, health issues, and much, much more. Sign up for our email newsletter. Text the word Kemet, K-E-M-E-T, to 22828 to sign up for our email newsletter. Text the word Kemet, K-E-M-E-T, to 22828 to sign up for our email newsletter. Also visit our website, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. Sign up for our email newsletter as well. If you'd like this type of information, you can support the African History Network, $, the AHN show through Cash App, $, the AHN show through Cash App, also through PayPal, paypal.me/the AHN show, paypal.me/the AHN show. Okay, or at our website, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. If you donate through Cash App, be sure to type in $ the AHN show, SHOW, $, the AHN show, SHOW. All right, we're coming up on a break. 313-778-7600 is the call-in number. If you have a question or comment, 313-778-7600. Listen to the African History Network show right here on 910 a.m. Superstation of Future Radio. I'm Michael M. Hotep. We'll be back in a few minutes. Stand by, everybody. Stand by, everybody. All right, how's everybody doing? We got Deshaun Farad. How you doing, Frat? So so when we come back from break, we're going to deal with this story from Evanston, Illinois. You see it says reparations, how, H-O-W, right? Y'all see that, right? With the caption here, it says reparations, how. Y'all can respond. How you doing, Freddie, Nika, Latanya? Okay, y'all see this here, right? The reason why it says reparations, how, as opposed to reparations now, is because if you're not going to talk about how to get reparations, then what the hell are you talking about? You have to lay out what is the actual legal process to bring about reparations. Because a lot of people talk about reparations now, but don't talk about how to get it. It's not going to happen anytime soon because you don't have enough votes in the House or the Senate to pass a reparations bill. That's why instead of reparations now, I say reparations how. You have to explain the process of how to get it. It's like somebody saying, I want to win the lotto, but they don't buy a ticket. If you don't talk about how to get it, that's just a wish. You have to deal with the actual process of how to bring into fruition what it is you're talking about. So I don't talk about reparations now. I say reparations how. And if you don't understand the U.S. Constitution, you're not going to get it. All right, we'll deal with all this on the other side of the break. Let's see here. How's everybody doing? Desmond, Brianna, Alexander. Okay, everybody stand by. We'll be back in just a minute. Share this broadcast on your social media platforms. Invite your friends to tune in. All right, welcome back to the African History Network show right here on 9:10 a.m. the Superstation, the Future Radio. Hey, I'm your host, Brother Michael M. Hotep. It is Sunday, March 7th, 2021, and we are live. Hope everybody's doing well. Calling numbers 313-778-7600, 313-778-7600 is the calling number if you have a question or comment. So right before the break, we were laying out the topics for today's show. We're going to jump into this first topic here, and this deals with coming out of the city of Evanston, Illinois. All right. Now, I first heard about this story a few months ago, and I first heard that they were going to deal with reparations for African Americans. But this is tying into redlining, because see, I wanted to know how they were going to do this. Okay, now we've talked about reparations here on this show, repairing the damage, and the way I deal with reparations is different than most people because I deal with understanding law and making legal arguments for reparations. Because when you go to lawmakers in the House of Representatives or the Senate, and they really haven't gone, well, they've done it a little bit in the Senate, but you're not getting anywhere in the Senate. There's only 2.5 black people in the entire U.S. Senate. And one of them already said he's not voting for reparations. A Black Tea Party Republican, Senator Tim Scott from South Carolina. He already said he's not voting for reparations, which is interesting because Kamala Harris is for it. And Tim Scott, both his parents are black. He's not for it. He's already said he ain't voting for reparations. But anyway, when you go to lawmakers, you go and argue law. You don't go to lawmakers and argue morality. If you want to argue morality, go to church. When you go to lawmakers, you go to argue law. This is one of the mistakes that's being made in this whole reparations argument. Now, when I first heard about this story, I wanted to know, okay, how are they going to do this? Because I can see they're going to be lawsuits filed if they're trying to do reparations for slavery. But what they're doing is something very smart. Okay, they're targeting redlining and the legacy of redlining. Redlining comes out of the legacy of racism and discrimination. It's a legacy of slavery, but it's something more. The impact of it, we can see more directly the impact, and you have people who are still alive today that were victims of redlining. Whereas when we talk about slavery, all the former slaves, the last former slaves basically died out in the 1950s. There was some that lived into the 1940s. There are interviews with them, but the last known slave died in the 1950s. All of them are dead. But with redlining is different. So you have to understand how to choose your target if you actually want to accomplish something. And you take the path that's going to bring about the least amount of backlash and resistance and lawsuits, so you can actually keep what it is that you get. See, a lot of people don't want to deal with none of that stuff. They just want to say reparations now. My response is reparations how? Explain to me the process to bring into fruition what it is you say you want, and you're dealing with a legal process. Whether it's in the legislative branch of government, and the legislative branch writes laws, and then once you write laws, I guarantee you, it's going to be challenged in the judicial branch of government. In the judicial branch are the courts, and you're still dealing with laws. And when it's challenged in the courts, it's challenged on the basis that it's unconstitutional. And we'll deal with that argument in a minute, because that ties into Article 1, Section 9, Clause 1 of the U.S. Constitution, which is why the international transatlantic slave trade was abolished, and that law went into effect January 1st, 1808. This all deals with history and law. So we're gonna go to this clip here in just a second, Jalen. This would be clip. This would be clip 5 from ABC News. Clip 5. We're going to that in just a second here. How the first U.S. city to fund reparations for Black residents is making amends. Now, so Evanston, Illinois. If we look at this article from ABC News, Evanston, Illinois is the first U.S. city to fund a plan to distribute reparations to Black residents. Evanston, Illinois is like a lot of American cities. The city just north of Chicago appears picturesque, updated, and grand on one side, but not far away, one can see the signs of economic and racial segregation, despite the city's proud, diverse, and liberal reputation. Now, what sets Evanston, Illinois apart from other cities, however, is its groundbreaking plan to address the impact that segregation and African-American disenfranchisement has had. They're dealing with reparations. Now, I would personally, we've talked about this before, I would use a different term. Because when you say reparations, that automatically is going to bring about more opposition than usually support. So I would personally use a different term, understanding verbal martial arts, understanding how to block and blunt attacks before they actually happen. I would use, a different term, whether it's restitution or what have you. I would use a different term, but this is what they chose. So, okay, that's fine. Now, the impetus for the city's reparations resolution first passed in the year 2019 and was spearheaded by 5th Ward Alderman Robin Rue Simmons, R-U-E, Robin Rue Simmons, and is rooted partially in Robin Simmons' experience growing up in Black Evanston, Illinois. She said, early in my childhood, I was invited to have a play date. My white friends never had a play date at my home. Visiting a white friend's neighborhood, she noticed the streets were wider, W-I-D-E-R, not whiter, W-H-I-T-E-R, but wider, W-I-D-E-R. The trees were taller. The homes were bigger and brighter. As a young child, I recognized that difference. Now, I don't have time to get deep into this, but you can Google this. There's research, and I've seen an article, I think it was New York Times, something like this. It talks about how in neighborhoods that have taller trees and healthy trees, not trees that are sick, that are dying, but healthy trees, the trees provide shade in your neighborhood, and it provides cooler temperatures during the summertime in your neighborhood. So you have to use the air conditioning or what have you less in those neighborhoods, which helps reduce your energy bill. Also, trees give off oxygen. So you tend to have better oxygen levels and cleaner air as long as you're not next to a plant that's pumping pollution into the air. Okay. But in areas that have more trees, you tend to have, in general, cleaner air as well. So what she's talking, this article that I read, it was dealing with racism. It was dealing with a type of environmental racism, but it's dealing with urban planning and racism involving urban planning. Now, this is something that Robin Rue Simmons noticed when she was a child. Okay. And we're going to pull up this article here. This is from ABC News. It's from abcnews.go.com, ABC News, their official website. Also, ABC Channel 7 in the Channel 7 affiliate in Chicago ran this story as well. Okay. So this is now some of the activists, you know, they want reparations for slavery, things like that. Okay, that's fine. But this is what you can deal with right now. That ain't gonna happen for some time. I'm trying to tell y'all. If you couldn't, let's just be like realistic. If you couldn't get reparations for 4 million former slaves while they were alive during Reconstruction, what do you think your chances are of actually realistically getting reparations for 40 million plus African Americans and all the former slaves are dead? I mean, let's just be honest. Because very few people like really want to like be honest. See, I told you before, I don't give a damn. I'll tell you the truth. I don't care. There are very few people really want to be honest with this. Okay. So that's why you have to have strategies that are going to actually bring about some type of restitution. It's going to actually bring about some type of realistic results. Okay. So read this article here. How the first U.S. city to fund reparations for Black residents is making amends. Up to $25,000 per eligible resident for housing will be distributed this year, 2021. Okay. So she said, early in my visit, I was invited to a play date, she recalled. My white friends never had a play date at my home. Visiting a white friend's neighborhood, she noticed the streets were wider, the trees were taller, the homes were bigger and brighter. As a young child, I recognized that difference. Now, this is part of a series called Soul of a Nation, S-O-U-L, Soul of a Nation. It airs Tuesday at 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, ABC. Check this out. Check out this article. They have the information, and it's going to air on Hulu also. All right. She said, I never felt in any way envious. I never had that feeling like, why isn't my family doing better? It was obvious that it was the barrier of race that kept us from that. Now, Robin Rue Simmons still lives in the ward she represents. She says over time, resources were stripped away from her neighborhood. That, she said, coupled with a lack of investment, led to an ever-increasing wealth gap between white and African Americans in the city. Okay. Now, when we talk about an increasing wealth gap, here's a picture of Robin Rue Simmons. He's talking about an increasing wealth gap. I've talked about this before. I'll talk about it again today, and I'll talk about it tomorrow, next week, and next year. Cash payments can be part of an overall reparation solution. Ain't no way in the hell cash payments should be the only form of reparations. Because if we all got $1 million a day, you know white people are having it all back this time next week. And the only thing you would have done is stimulated the economy. You have to also change the laws and policies that were put in place that brought you to the place where you have this structural inequity in the wealth gap. Just giving money doesn't solve it. You got to correct the laws, because if you don't, in 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, 20 years, you're going to be right back in the same predicament. But the problem is it's going to be worse, because they say, well, look, we just gave you money 10 years ago, 15 years ago. What'd you do with it? No, we took care of that. No, you go figure this out now. We paid y'all. You go figure this out now. No, you didn't correct the structural inequities. You didn't correct the laws and policies that brought us to this point. That's why you got to deal with the history. That's why you have to deal with the laws. Politics is the legal distribution of scarce wealth, power, and resources, and the writing of laws, statutes, ordinances, amendments, and treaties, their adoption, interpretation, and enforcement. So cash payments can be one part of an overall solution for restitution, reparations, whatever you want to call it. Ain't no in hell it should just be in the form of cash payment. Oh, cash payments. Oh no, not at all. No. That you and we'll get to that later. I talked about this last week. But the root concept of reparations means to repair. People misunderstand and think it's to deal with the wealth gap, the racial wealth gap. That's only one result of 246 years of slavery and decades of Jim Crow segregation. If you're trying to repair, means to restore someone back to the condition they were in before the trauma was inflicted upon them, before the damage was done. To properly assess reparations and the damage done to African people, you first have to analyze and assess who African people were and what we had before the damage was done. We were a people who had our history intact, our culture intact, our African languages intact, spiritual systems, cosmology, cosmogony. We had land. We had ties to our ancestry. Okay, we had our folklore, our mores. We had an entire system that it's your history and culture that gives you your foundation, your values, your interests, and your principles. This influences your self-esteem, your self-development, your self-worth. This gives you a cultural paradigm that you see reality through. You first have to understand, see, this is part of the problem when people don't understand history and they want to equate reparations with just a check. Just a check don't address repairing the psychological damage and what was actually taken away from us. If you think that reparations is just compensation for labor, then that means you really don't understand the history of African people and what happened to us and what was taken away from us. If you deal with a people who've been stripped of their spiritual systems, most of us carry the name of our slave masters, our former slave masters. If you're dealing with a people who've largely been taught to hate themselves and see reality through the eyes of Europeans, then if they get a lump sum of money today, what do you think they'll do with it? We can, on the one hand, go to conferences in person or virtually every year that talk about how we spend 97% of our dollars with people that don't look like us, and then think if all of a sudden we get a lump sum of money, that spending habit is going to change. If anything, it's going to get worse. So we got to be honest. Because I told you before, I don't give a damn. I'll tell you the truth. We have to be honest with this. All right, let's continue. So let's go back to this. This is from abcnews.com. How the first U.S. city to fund reparations for Black residents is making amends. How the first U.S. city to fund reparations for Black residents is making amends. So this is Robin Rue Simmons, 5th Ward Alderman, there in Evanston, Illinois. We'll go to the phone lines here in just a minute. Just stand by. We have a lot to cover today. So Robin hopes that her work will help families in her neighborhood that are burdened get some relief via reparations, which will first be distributed this year in increments of up to $25,000 per eligible resident to use for housing. The reason why this is important is because home ownership, buying a home, and is one of the main ways that people have been able to accumulate wealth in this country. And then that ties into the GI Bill in 1944, And many African American GIs who earned the GI benefits were locked out of, one way or another, taking full advantage of those benefits, whether it was getting money to go to college, whether it was getting money to start businesses, or whether it's getting low interest loans to buy houses in the newly formed suburbs. This is what the GI Bill did. Okay, that was part of the New Deal. That was the last bill in the New Deal coming from President Franklin Roosevelt. In the GI Bill, and we've talked about this here before on the show, the GI Bill fundamentally changed the landscape of higher education in this country. It fundamentally changed who was able to go to college. This is what the GI Bill did. This was a government policy. There was about $67 billion invested from about 1945 to about 1970 by the federal government. Many African Americans and African American GIs were paying taxes to the federal government, but being discriminated against and couldn't fully take advantage of the benefits that they earned because they served in World War II or served in the military. One, two, their taxpayer dollars are financing all this. So you have to understand this history. At history.com, they have an article dealing with how African American soldiers in World War II were discriminated against with the GI Bill. Okay. Now, yes, some of us could take advantage of it, but a lot of us either were discriminated against altogether, or we were not allowed to take full advantage of the benefits that we earned, whereas white men could. All right, let's continue here. So the discussion on reparations has been ongoing and controversial in the U.S. since slavery was abolished in 1865. The 13th Amendment, December 1865. Originally, reparations were proposed to make amends for slavery, which built the nation's wealth but excluded African Americans from it. Reparations first arose as a promise in early 1865 to redistribute land to the Southeast to formerly enslaved people. For decades, the promise is often invoked in the phrase 40 acres and a mule. That's Special Field Order number 15. It was a promise left unfulfilled. By the end of 1865, President Andrew Johnson overturned the land redistribution. But, now here's the thing. But I'm not gonna make a big deal out of this. We'll deal with this in another show or something. I talked about Special Field Order number 15 in the past. First of all, it was about 400,000 acres of land that was divided up among 40,000 African American families. 40,000 African American families. It only applied to coastal land in Georgia, Florida, and South Carolina. Okay. It only applied to coastal land in Georgia, Florida, and South Carolina. Now, I'm going to give you this article, and we'll deal with it in another show. I've talked about it before, but for the sake of time, we'll deal with it in another show. The truth behind 40 acres and a mule. The truth behind 40 acres and a mule. This was an article that Dr. Henry Louis Gates Jr. wrote for theroot.com originally some years ago. PBS picked it up. But this deals with the whole history behind 40 acres and a mule. Because when I studied the history of 40 acres and a mule, one, the mule was loaned. The mule was to be loaned. They weren't given a mule. Two, when I go through and really study this history, it wasn't, for my reading of this, it wasn't necessarily designed to be reparations for slavery. Basically, what they were saying was, look, we're coming to the war. We're coming to the end of the Civil War. These 4 million slaves are going to be freed. There was a conversation that was had with 20 African American ministers, 20 or so African American ministers. Okay. And they were asked, what do your people need to be free? Because these slaves are going to be free. And the ministers resoundingly said, we need land. It wasn't necessarily because you work for free, we're going to give you land. No, it was like, look, they're going to be free. Now, what are we going to do? They're gonna be what they're gonna do? They're gonna need some land. Okay. So we're gonna appropriate land to them. But it wasn't necessarily we're gonna give you land because you work. It wasn't necessarily we're gonna give you land because you work for free already. It's like, look, they're gonna be free. Now, what the hell you want them to do? Well, we're gonna give them some land to work. So very quickly here, if you could read the rest of this yourself. I just want to zero in on a section of this article here. And this is also in Gates' book that I have, one of his books that I have next to me somewhere. 100 Amazing Facts About the Negro. This was a series that he did for The Root. Each week, he took one of J.A. Rogers' facts about the Negro that the book J.A. Rogers wrote decades ago, 100 Amazing Facts About the Negro, and he went through and analyzed it and did an essay on it. We have been taught in school that the source of, now this is General William T. Sherman, okay, General Sherman, May 1865. We have been taught in school that the source of the policy of 40 acres and a mule was Union General William T. Sherman's Special Field Order number 15 issued on January 16, 1865. That account is half right. Sherman prescribed the 40 acres in that order, but not the mule. The mule comes later, and the mule was to be loaned. Okay, that wasn't like free. Hey, we're gonna give you a mule because you work for free like a mule. No, that's not what happened. But what many accounts leave out is that this idea for massive land redistribution. Okay, can you all see this? I want to make sure those watching on Facebook and YouTube, I want to make sure you see this. Go back and read this entire article, because when people do all these damn videos, all this stuff, I can tell they ain't read a damn thing. Go study this history. Okay, go read this entire article. But what many accounts leave out is that this idea for massive land redistribution actually was the result of a discussion that General William T. Sherman and Secretary of War Edwin M. Stanton held 4 days before General Sherman issued Special Field Order number 15. He held this meeting with 20 leaders of the African American community in Savannah, Georgia, where General Sherman was headquartered following his famous march to the sea, SEA. The meeting was unprecedented in American history. Today, we commonly use the phrase 40 acres and a mule, but few of us have read, R-E-A-D, few of us have read the order itself. 3 of its parts are relevant here. Section 1 bears repeating in full. The islands of Charleston, South, the abandoned rice fields along the rivers for 30 miles back from the sea, and the country bordering the St. Johns River in Florida are reserved and set apart for the settlement of the Negroes, now made free by the acts of war and the proclamation of the President of the United States. That's the proclamation, the Emancipation Proclamation, January 1st, 1863. That was the second Emancipation Proclamation, because the preliminary one was September 22nd, 1862. Now, Section 2 of Special Field Order number 15 specifies that these new communities, moreover, would be governed entirely by Black people themselves. So when this is coastal land, this applies to coastal land in Georgia, Florida, and South Carolina only. It wasn't the whole South, but it was supposed to be land that was governed by us. It was really creating a nation within a nation. Section 2 specifies that these new communities, moreover, would be governed entirely by Black people themselves on the islands and in the settlements hereafter to be established. No white person, let me highlight this because so people are not confused, okay? Hereafter to be established, no white person, whatever, unless military officers and soldiers detailed for duty will be permitted to reside. So that land, it was really supposed to create like a black nation, so to speak, because African Americans were supposed to govern themselves. And the sole and exclusive management of affairs will be left to the freed people themselves. This is Special Field Order number 15. That's ostensibly known as 40 acres and a mule. And the sole, S-O-L-E, the sole and exclusive management of affairs will be left to the freed people themselves. Now, this reminds me of Dr. John Henrik Clark. Because, see, Dr. Clark used to say, don't come at me talking that nationhood stuff until you have acquired the skills that are necessary to run a nation. He talked about mineral wealth management, oceanography, agricultural skills, understanding how economies work. It's easy to say we want a nation, we want a nation. And if you got one, there'd be a civil war this time next week, unless you acquire the skills necessary to manage a nation. This is what Special Field Order number 15 was laying out. How's everybody doing? Y'all okay? Hopefully y'all are learning something. All right, let's continue. By the laws of war and orders of the President of the United States, the Negro is free and must be dealt with as such. Finally, Section 3 specifies the allocation of land. Each family shall have a plot of not more than 40 acres of tillable ground, and when it borders on some water channel with not more than 800 feet waterfront, in the possession of which land the military authorities will afford them protection until such time as they can protect themselves or until Congress shall regulate their title. Now, with this order, Special Field Order number 15, with this order, 400,000 acres of land, quote, a strip of coastline stretching from Charleston, South Carolina, to the St. Johns River in Florida, including Georgia's Sea Islands and the mainland 30 miles in from the coast, as Barton Myers reports, would be redistributed to the newly freed slaves. Is 400,000 acres of land, giving them plots of up to 40 acres and this went to about 40,000 African-American families. The extent of this order and its larger implications are mind-boggling, actually. Now, okay, so read the rest of this. I don't have time getting this here. I got 3 other topics to get to. But read this. The truth behind 40 acres and a mule. I'm not a big fan of Gates, but I always say, I read Gates' books. I read Gates' articles. I've read dozens of articles that he's written. He writes some good articles. Now, I disagree with him on some things about the transatlantic slave trade, but he writes some good articles. So read this here from pbs.org. The truth behind 40, this public broadcasting system, PBS. The truth behind 40 acres and a mule. Okay. All right. We're going to go to this clip right now before the break. Jalen, clip number 5, how the first U.S. city to fund reparations for Black residents is making amends. This is from ABC News. Let's go to this clip.
Do you apply for the reparations?
I will, yeah.
Why?
Because it's old.
This is my home. It's where I live. I love it. My people are here. This community was redlined historically, and that has come along with damages that continue today. Resources were stripped away from the Black community, and that stripped away a sense of place and wealth as well. We've been doing the work, and the work that we've done has not produced any relief in the racial disparities that we have. And it was appropriate that we do something radically different to make good on the commitment that we've made to the Black community. And reparations was the next thing for us to do.
I'm 98 years old.
We moved to Evanston in 1959.
The contractor, he said, so it's completely honest. Find a lot anywhere in Evanston, and I'll build whatever you want. Well, when he said that, he meant in the black neighborhood. It was just the way it was. And as we speak, in 2021, we still have these same types of problems.
My hope is that families that are currently living here right now today that are burdened get some relief and build some wealth through our reparation program.
It's certainly a starter. If you look at housing prices today, is that a down payment?
It's a drop in the bucket. You have denied me all my 98 years. Hopefully, before I die, I'll see the world change.
You get some reparations.
I get the reparations right.
So for you, this notion of reparations in Evanston isn't meant to be a drop in the bucket, but the beginning of a stream that becomes a river, that becomes an ocean.
When I introduced reparations in Evanston, it was always the first step of many to come. There is a lifetime of work ahead of me and my children for us to get to justice for the Black community. And I can't wait to celebrate the family that receives their first reparation benefit. I cannot wait for that day.
Okay, we're coming up on the break. List of the African History Network show right here on 910 AM Superstation and Future Radio. I'm your host, Brother Michael M. Hotep. We'll be back in a few minutes and we'll go to the phone lines. Stand by, everybody. How's everybody doing? Share this broadcasting on social media platforms. Invite your friends to tune in also. Stand by. Read this full article here. Read other articles about it also. We'll post this article here from ABC News. But what they're doing is they're taxing the revenue generated from marijuana, the legal marijuana sales. They're taxing that to get this money to have these the $25,000 allotment. It's a $10 million plan. It's the restorative housing reparations, the restorative housing reparations program that would distribute up to $25,000 for housing per eligible resident, with funding expected to come from a 3% tax on recreational marijuana sales. All right, how you doing, Anita? Yeah, we'll probably talk about the filibuster Monday or Tuesday on the show. All right, everybody share this broadcast on social media platforms. Invite your friends to tune in also. How's everybody doing? We've got Anita in Detroit. We've got
910 AM Superstation, a division of Adele Media. So you decided to go to college.
Okay. We've got stand by. We're back from break in just a minute here. Okay, we got Lawrence. How you doing, Lawrence? We're back from break in just a minute. Let's see. Some of these topics I may have to do these Monday. You know, I pull together these topics. I got all the stuff. This is all the topics for the show. I got articles for Bloody Sunday, articles for Mississippi. We got, which day is this? Yep. Senate passes $1.9 trillion bill. I got all this stuff. I got all this stuff laid out, but you know, then I end up wanting to be thorough and explain things. So it takes longer, but I got the whole show laid out. Welcome back to the African History Network show right here on 9:10 a.m. Superstation Future Radio. Hey, I'm your host, Brother Michael M. Hotep. It is Sunday, March 7th, 2021, and we're live. So right before the break, we were talking about this story out of Evanston, Illinois. This deals with how the first U.S. city is has created this fund to pay reparations to African-American residents in Evanston, Illinois. And this is dealing with the effects of redlining, okay? And it's the first initiative of the $10 million plan is the Restorative Housing Reparations Program that would distribute up to $25,000 for housing per eligible resident, with funding expected to come from a 3% tax on recreational marijuana. All right, let's go quickly here to the phone lines. Let's go to Chuck, line 1. Chuck, thanks for holding. Welcome to the African History Network show. Tell us where you're calling from.
I'm calling from Detroit. Mr. Brother Mike.
Yes.
Hotep.
Yes, sir.
Hey, listen. You're dynamic, man. You break it down. Hey, but my question is, what ethnicity, what nationality would be considered white?
What nationality would be considered white? What ethnicity?
Or ethnicity?
Well, based
like
upon
Irish,
based upon the U.S. government, people immigrating to the U.S. from North Africa are classified as white. People coming in from Egypt are classified as white. If you go to census.gov and look at the last census form, go to census.gov and look at the 2020 census form. On the census form, it breaks down the racial classifications. So it talks about those whose ancestry is from Europe, but it also says that those who come from North Africa, Egypt, Morocco, Algeria, the North African countries, and as well as those coming from the Middle East, because there's no classification on the U.S. Census form. There's no classification for Arab. So those who call themselves Arab, those coming from the Middle East, they're classified as white by the U.S. government as well. Okay, so white is more than just Irish or Italian or German or French. It also includes. So there was a famous court case from 1978 of a man named Mustafa Hefni. Mustafa Hefni was from Egypt, but he was Nubian, which gets into a whole nother history, because the geographical demarcations that exist in Africa today largely come from the Berlin Conference of 1884 and 1885. And the lower portion of what is Egypt today and the upper portion of the Sudan, historically that was Nubia, or could be called Ta-Nehisi. So Mustafa Hefni is African. He's Black African. He said when he went through immigration, they gave him his immigration papers and they told him, you are white now, W-H-I-T-E. You are white now. This is a famous case. He came to Detroit. He moved when he came to the U.S. He lived in Detroit. So this is a case that you can Google this and read about Mustafa Hefni, and he fought for decades to be reclassified as Black, and they wouldn't let him do it. Okay, because Egyptians, because those coming from North Africa are classified as white by the federal government in the U.S. Census and Immigration, things like this. Okay, man. All right, but people look at that case of Mustafa Hefni. I'll give you the correct spelling of his name. What was your last question?
I was going to say, so how do we address that to the young generation? Because I heard you say earlier that the young students were to write, what would they consider slave?
Oh yeah, that's the next story I'm coming to. I gave a preview of that story, but I haven't got to that story yet. That's the next story that I'll deal with after this one here. So we have to teach them the real history and teach them. They have to understand law also. But I'll deal with that when I get to that story. I'm trying to finish up this story right now.
But you right though. You know, how can you teach something that they don't know?
Right.
You know, I mean, not you, but how could they learn or understand anything that they don't know when it's been established and, like you say, it's been, you know, written by almost by laws that certain ethnics are this and certain ethnics are not this or that.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Right.
But you breaks it down, though. You breaks it down. Really appreciate you, my brother.
Thanks for calling, man. Keep listening. All right, thank you. Okay, people, check out this article here. This is time.com. This is Time Magazine. This is from September 7th, 2012. Egyptian immigrant wants to be you can hang up the phone. You can disconnect the call, Jalen. Egyptian immigrant wants to be reclassified as black. Egyptian immigrant wants to be reclassified as black. Mustafa Hefni, Mostafa. Mustafa Hefni feels he's been black his whole life. The U.S. government does not agree. Okay, this is a picture of Mustafa Hefni, Dr. Mustafa Hefni. And it says very quickly here, because I talked about this in my lectures in the past, so I'm familiar with the case. Anyone who's ever filled out a census document or taken the SATs is familiar with that odd moment when you have to bubble in your racial classification. For many, the chances are confusing, limiting, and problematic. In the end, each person bubbles in what they best feel represents their identity. But when Dr. Mustafa Hefni immigrated to the United States from Egypt in 1978, he didn't get a say in that decision. The government said, referring to the interviewer, the government said, "You are now white," Dr. Mustafa Hefni told CBS Detroit. Since the 1980s, CBS reports Dr. Mustafa Hefni has been fighting to have the U.S. government reclassify him as black, which is how he's always seen himself. Quote, "My classification as a white man takes away my black pride, my black heritage, and my strong black identity," Dr. Mustafa Hefni told the Detroit News. Now, Dr. Hefni, 61 years old at the time, filed a lawsuit in 1997 against the United States government to be reclassified, but his case was dismissed. Now, this ties into legal status, and people will talk about Black's Law Dictionary. People will talk about the petition of the Free Sundry Moors of 1790 in South Carolina. And the Free Sundry, that petition, the Free Sundry Moors wanted to make sure if they had to go to court or something like that, they would not be held to the Negro laws of 17, I think it's about 1740, something like that in South Carolina, the Negro Act or something like that in 1790 in 1740 in South Carolina, which was put in place after the Stonewall Rebellion in 1739. So this shows like the difference in legal status and how the Moors had the legal status of white. This gets into a whole nother thing. I ain't got time to get into this, but this is just so you know this another portion of this. Okay, if you look at census classifications, that gives you some type of inkling, that gives you some type of idea that there's a whole nother area that the census is not talking about, that deals with status and legal status, things like that. Okay, so white is not just the concept of race is man-made, and you deal with people like Dr. Carl von Linnaeus and Dr. Johann Friedrich Blumenbach. Is Blumenbach in 1779 that coins the term Caucasian, all this stuff. It gets to a whole nother area that I don't have time to get into, but race is man-made. There's only one race, the human race. You deal with the stratification of humanity into these different racial classifications that we see take place in largely the 18th century. But then you deal with legal status. So then when you look at the Moors, and we talk about Washita Moors or whatever nation or what have you, you deal with a different classification. But also, it's important to note that so when you talk about Native Americans, you had some Native Americans that were classified as white, the status of white. Okay, so it's black and white is not just dealing with race, and race is man-made, but it's also dealing with legal status. Okay, which is a whole nother area, whole nother conversation. But when you deal with this case right here, dealing with Mustafa Hefny, this gets into that. Okay, and then you deal with Arabs. You deal with people coming from the Middle East are classified as white. Now, it doesn't matter their complexion. People coming from North Africa and the Middle East are classified as white. Now, it doesn't matter their complexion. It doesn't say, well, if a light-skinned person from Egypt comes to the U.S., they're going to be classified as white. But if a dark-skinned one comes from Egypt, they're classified as black. No, it's based upon their nationality. Because once again, look at Dr. Mustafa Hefny. Okay, he looks like a brother you may see on 6 Mile. He looks like a brother. He looks like a brother from he looks like he has an afro. Looks like a brother from Detroit. Looks like he could be one of our uncles or our grandfathers, something like that. So, all right. So read this article here from time.com. Egyptian immigrant wants to be reclassified as black. Mustafa Hefny feels he's been black his whole life. The U.S. government doesn't agree. Okay. All right. Let's continue here. Yeah, black and white are just status. Yeah, black and white are status. See, so you have racial classifications, but race is man-made. There's only one race, the human race. But black and white, you're dealing with status as well. Okay. Let's continue here. So if we go back to the article dealing with, if we go back to the article from ABC News dealing with reparations in Evanston, Illinois. And we're going to go to this other clip here in just a second, Jalen, from ABC Channel 7 in Chicago. Okay, how the first U.S. city to fund reparations for Black residents is making amends. This is from March 1st, 2021. Okay, so it was a promise left unfulfilled. So they're talking about 40 acres and a mule. Johnson takes back the majority of the land that's given. Black Americans have endured a succession of injustices, from Black codes to Jim Crow and redlining American policies that broadly kept generational wealth building out of reach from many Black communities. Today, Evanston, Illinois is the first city in the United States to fund reparations, committing $10 million over the next decade, $10 million over the next decade in an attempt to repay Black residents for the wrongs and accumulated losses incurred by generations of racism. Now, when I first heard this story, I said, okay, I wonder what type of lawsuits are going to be filed in opposition to this and what their argument is going to be. Because this is going to end up in court. I already know this is going to end up in court. So I want to know what their legal arguments are going to be. Now, Fifth Ward Alderman Ruth Simmons says she didn't start her elected career even discussing reparations. It was something I had planned to pursue. It was not something I had planned to pursue. I was looking at data. I was looking at what we had done, what more we could do, and reparations was the only answer. Okay. Here's another picture of her as well. So there was an important part here I want to go to on page 3 of this article. She explained that any more of the status quo would sustain, quote, the oppressed state and the disparity that we have and that we have had for years. That's all it could do. More of the same, end quote. Okay. The only legislative response for us to reconcile the damages in the Black community is reparations. Now, they talk about a 70-page study here. And the studies are extremely important. Why? Because a lot of people don't know the history. And a lot of people are in denial of the history. Ruth Simmons and her colleagues had the support of local historian Dino Robinson in building the case for reparations. So here's what they did. They're in a predominantly African-American city, but they still realized they needed to make their argument and build the case for reparations. And when I was taking, because I used to attend a law class, and it was dealing with status and things like this. And I had knowledge of that even before I took the class. But the instructor would tell us, make your argument. Because you're dealing with legal arguments. Make your argument. This is why you hear me say make your argument, or what's your argument on this thing? That comes from that class and understanding that, right? So they ain't just say we want reparations because we were enslaved for 246 years, blah, blah, blah. They're building their case. They're building their argument. And this is something that a lot of us don't understand. Okay. You have to make your argument. Ruth Simmons and her colleagues had the support of local historian Dino Robinson in building the case for reparations. Robinson is the founder of the Shorefront Legacy Center in Evanston, Illinois, an archive dedicated solely to chronicling and celebrating the local Black history that had long gone ignored. In a 70-plus page report, local historian Dino Robinson documented discrimination and racism in Evanston that dated back to the late 1800s. They did the research, they put together the report to then support the law that they're going to vote on and put in place to address a problem that was the result of policy redlining. We'll deal with this on the other side of the break. Listen to the African History Network show right here on 910 AM Superstation and Future Radio. I'm Michael M. Hotep. We'll be back in a few minutes. All right, stand by. Okay, Mikhail, Christy, how's everybody? Rogers Bay. Rogers Bay sounds like a Moor. How you doing, man? Salam. What is the name of the Charleston? Okay, I gave you the name. Did you need it? Did you get the name of the article, Nika? Let me scroll it down. how the first U.S. city to fund reparations for Black residents is making amends. All right, how's everybody doing? Stand by. We're back from break in just a minute here. All right, everybody. Okay, how's everybody doing? Calling number is 313-778-7600 is the calling number if you have a question or comment. 313-778-7600 is the calling number if you have a question or comment. If you like this type of information, also you can support us, $ the AHN show through Cash App, $ the AHN show through Cash App. Also through PayPal, paypal.me/the AHN show, paypal.me/the AHN show. Welcome back to the African History Network show right here on 910 AM, the Superstation of Future Radio. Hey, I'm your host, Brother Michael M. Hotep. Now, this time goes by very quickly because, you know, now we're here 6 days a week, okay? Just so everybody understands. I know some people, it's your first time watching, and I'm doing live radio right now. This ain't a Facebook show. We're broadcasting on 910 AM, the Superstation WFDF here in Detroit. People listen all throughout Detroit. We broadcast across the country through Facebook and YouTube also, but I'm a radio talk show host here in Detroit. They just have us broadcasting from home because of COVID-19. Normally Sunday nights I'm in the radio station studio. So we're here Monday through Friday, 11 p.m. to 12 midnight Eastern Standard Time. Monday through Friday, 11 p.m. to 12 midnight Eastern Standard Time. And Sundays, 9 p.m. to 11 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So be sure to follow us on our Facebook fan page, The African History Network, The African History Network, and our YouTube channel, Michael M. Hotep. Okay. All right. So right before the break, I'm discussing this this story that I heard about back in 2019 and heard about in the past couple of months as well. This is coming out of Evanston, Illinois. And this deals with reparations, but for African Americans, but it's tied to redlining. Okay, something they can actually get something tangible for, something they can actually get reparations for right now. Okay, so we were talking about this right before the break. We're gonna go back to this topic here. We'll go back to the phone lines. Calling numbers 313-778-7600. 313-778-7600 is the call-in number if you have a question or comment, okay? And you saw the caption that I had posted here. It said reparations, how? H-O-W. Some people may have thought I hit the H key instead of the N key. Michael M. Hotep, it's supposed to be reparations now. No, it's supposed to be reparations how? Why is that? Explain to me, how do you get it? See, it's easy to say we want reparations, we want reparations. My response is, explain to me the process to actually bring it into fruition, because it's a legislative process based upon Article 1, Section 9, Clause 7 of the U.S. Constitution. Congress controls the purse. A reparations bill has to pass both the House of Representatives and the U.S. Senate, and you're gonna need 60 votes in the Senate, unless they do it during budget reconciliation, and it ain't gonna happen for a simple majority of 51. That's not gonna happen. You know how many white people in the U.S. Senate got to vote for reparations? If you couldn't get once again, Senator Ron Johnson, conspiracy theorist, Senator Ron Johnson of Wisconsin blocked the Juneteenth bill using a unanimous consent rule in the U.S. Senate. If you can't get a bill passed in the U.S. Senate to make Juneteenth a federal holiday and give white people the day off from work, How you gonna get a reparations bill passed in the Senate? Not with these people. You need more. You need more people in the Senate that support reparations. There's only 2.5 black people in the entire U.S. Senate. Even among the Democrats, a lot of them don't support reparations in the Senate. You think Joe Manchin of West Virginia supports reparations? Kristen Sinema, a lot of them don't support it. You need 60 votes in the Senate. You ain't nowhere near 60. If you need 60 votes in the Senate to get a reparations bill passed, that means that you're gonna need some Republicans to vote for reparations. See, nobody really wants to have this conversation. I told you I don't give a damn. I'll tell you the truth. The $1.9 trillion American Rescue Plan that just passed the Senate, not a single Republican voted for that bill, and that bill will help a lot of poor white people in their states that voted for them. That bill will give $1,400 stimulus checks. That bill will reduce child poverty by almost 50%. There's a whole lot of poor white people in South Carolina, Kentucky, Alabama, Georgia, all these states that are largely Republican states. And even though Georgia just voted 2 Democrats in the U.S. Senate, it's still a Republican-dominated state legislature, and you still got Brian Kemp as the governor, Republican. If they're not going to vote for the $1.9 trillion coronavirus bill to help poor white people in their own states, what makes you think these Republicans are going to vote for a reparations bill? This is why when people come at me with this simple Simon ass nonsense, I have to look at them. It's like, why don't you be honest with our people and stop lying to them? Just be honest with our people. Like I said, I don't care. I'll tell you the truth. Nobody want to have this conversation. I'll tell you the truth. This is why when people say reparations now, my response is reparations how? Explain to me the process. The legislative process. It's not going to be an executive order. I had one dumbass on my Facebook fan page. I had to block. Oh, Joe Biden can do an executive order to pay reparations. Congress appropriates funds. A president can't do an executive order to pay reparations. It has to pass both the House and the Senate, and then it goes to the president's desk to be signing the law. This Article 1, Section 9, Clause 7 of the U.S. Constitution. If you go to, I think it's history.house.gov. I'll pull up the actual, because at house.gov, official website of the House of Representatives, they have a history section. Same thing at senate.gov. Okay, they have a history section there. And so let's try to pull this up here just for the sake of accuracy. Let's see, what is that? Power of the purse. Yeah, here we go. Let's look at this here very quickly. Because we dealt with the story a couple months ago. Well, it was a story from January 19th, 2021 from CBS News. And the name of the story was dealing with how most Americans don't know what's in the U.S. Constitution. And they were talking about a lot of white people. Okay. And a lot of Americans can't name the 3 branches of government, don't know how many seats there are on the U.S. House of Representatives, things like this. Okay, let's look at this here. This is at history.house.gov. Okay, I was correct. Power of the purse. All bills for raising revenue shall originate in the House of Representatives, but the Senate may propose or concur with amendments as on other bills. Okay, now that's Article 1, Section 7, Clause 1. Article 1, Section 9, Clause 7 of the U.S. Constitution. No money shall be drawn from the Treasury but in consequence of appropriations made by law, and a regular statement and account of the receipts and expenditures of all public money shall be published time to time, published from time to time. Okay. And you scroll down, where's it highlighted at? Down here. Is this the right one? Who was it? Okay, so this ties in the power of the purse. Okay. It has to pass both, read the whole thing. It has to pass both the House and the Senate. So you have some people who say, oh, well, President Obama gave Jewish Holocaust survivors $12 million. If you actually read the full article and get past the headline, you'll see that it was a bill in the House of Representatives, and Debbie Wasserman Schwartz of Florida was one of the sponsors of the bill. The bill passed the House of Representatives. The bill passed the U.S. Senate, and it was signed into law by a president based upon Article 1, Section 9, Clause 7. Like I said, it has to pass the legislative branch of government. And that was, read the full article, that was $12 million over the course of 5 years, $2.5 million. I mean, $2.5 million over the course of 5 years, total $12 million. Read the full damn article, okay? Come on. All right, but read this one also. Now, let's continue here. I want to go back to this one here. We'll post the name. We'll post the link to this article here from house.gov, history.house.gov. House.gov, once again, is the official website of the House of Representatives. This is why I say read the U.S. Constitution. Go to archives.gov, National Archives website, or LOC.gov, Library of Congress. You can read the Constitution there, okay? Because when you understand this, then you understand, okay, like which direction to go. Because you have people, I hear people saying, oh, we're going to do. I remember back when Jill Stein was running for president in 2016. I saw black people in Detroit passing out flyers saying, we're going to vote for Jill Stein because Jill Stein's going to give us reparations. They said, we're gonna get Jill Stein to do an executive order for reparations, to pay reparations. They said, we're going to get Jill Stein. We're going to vote for Jill Stein to get her in office, to get her to do an executive order for reparations, to pay reparations. Okay, not an executive order for a commission, but to actually pay reparations. I'm standing there looking at them like, really? Oh. Okay. This is what you're gonna do. Okay. How'd that work out for you? Well, you got Donald Trump. Because Jill Stein got 50,000 votes out of Michigan. And Donald Trump won Michigan by 10,704 votes. How the hell that work out? Okay. So, anyway, long story short, because I lost some friends over that, but it was whatever. I told you I don't care. I'm gonna tell you the truth. Okay, I'm gonna tell you the truth. Okay, people don't like it. Well, okay, I'm not trying to hurt anybody's feelings, but I told people, you vote for Jill Stein or vote for Trump. I told people that. They ain't believe me. How'd that work out? So let's go back to this one here. 70-page report. This is extremely important because doing the research for a report, then actually putting together the report and putting the information in a logical form, that's the non-sexy work. See, it's cool to have hearings on reparations and all that stuff. Actually putting together the report and doing the research for it, that's the non-glamorous, non-sexy work that a lot of people don't want to do. That's one of the most important things. That helps you make your argument. So Ruth Simmons, 5th Ward Alderman in Evanston, Illinois, and her colleagues had the support of local historian Dino Robinson in building the case for reparations. Robinson is the founder of the Shorefront Legacy Center in Evanston and archive in Evanston and archive. Okay, Robinson is the founder of the Shorefront Legacy Center in Evanston and archive dedicated to chronicling and celebrating the local Black history that had long gone ignored. Now, in a 70-page report, local historian Dino Robinson documented discrimination and racism in Evanston that dated back to the late 1800s. Brilliant. That's what you need. This is why I'm explaining to people that say, oh, we don't need to study for reparations. I'm like, you know how dumb some of the people in the House of Representatives are? Are you serious? And guess what? Their constituents are just as dumb as they are, if not even worse. America needs a massive history lesson. Yeah, you need more than a report. America needs a massive history lesson because Americans are very ignorant of history. Okay, I'm not attacking anybody, but it's by design. Civics has been taken out of school. Almost 2/3 of Americans can't name the 3 branches of government. 1 in 5 Americans can't name 1 branch of government. There was the YouGov study that we talked about here on this show from April 4th, 2018, 50th anniversary of the assassination of Dr. King. 40% of white people in America said African Americans would be as equally as successful if they just tried harder. This was a study. This was a poll from YouGov. Okay, Newsweek.com has an article on this. 40% of white people surveyed said that African Americans would be as equally as successful if they just tried harder. They don't want to talk about the wage of the racial wage gap and how African American women make about 67 cents on every dollar that the average white man makes, and it takes the average African American woman 20 months to make the same amount of money that the average white male made the previous 12 months. Try harder. How about pay equally? Quote, we anticipate litigation to tie things up with the premise that, quote, you cannot take tax money that's from the public to benefit a particular group of people. Local historian Dino Robinson said. This is what I'm saying. See, because I already know the attacks that are coming. He said, we anticipate litigation, that means lawsuits, to tie things up with the premise that you cannot use tax money that's from the public to benefit a particular group of people, referring to opposition to the city's plan. But he countered the entire Black community historically has paid taxes, but were not guaranteed the same benefits. But he knows a lawsuit is coming. This is why you want to make sure that you're on strong legal foundation and done your research before you pursue something like this. Because if you actually get something, you don't want it taken away. You don't want it overturned in court because the judicial branch of government interprets laws written by the legislative branch of government. And the judicial branch can uphold or strike down the law. So that's why you want to make sure your argument is strong and legally sound. He said part of the resistance is due to lack of education. Whoop, there it is. This is what I'm saying. Part of the resistance is lack of education. Quote, the one comment I hear most often is, I did not know, said Dino Robinson, who was smart enough to compile the study. I did not know there was segregation in Evanston, Illinois. I did not know that your housing mortgage is higher than mine, but we have the same income. Here's a picture of Dino, okay, the founder of the Shorefront Legacy Center in Evanston, Illinois. But records paint a clear picture of exactly how racial inequality developed in the city of Evanston, Illinois. Black community members were moving throughout Evanston and forming Black pockets in the city of Evanston, Dino Robinson said. It caused the white community to start panicking. They were like, what do we do about this? Articles and reports and studies were conducted on the African American community to discuss what should be done. And Evanston, Illinois, like many cities around the country, embraced the practice of redlining. That's a federal program. Redlining comes from the federal government. That wasn't something that just existed like in local cities. Okay, let's look quickly at this. Let's do this. Let's go to the phone lines. Let's go back to the phone lines. I'm trying to keep this conversation short, right? Because y'all know I can do this for like one topic for 3 hours. Because I got tons of information on this. Let's go to, let's see, who we have here. We've got Wadsworth. Wadsworth, line 2 or line 1. Hey, Wadsworth, welcome to the African History Network show. Thanks for holding. Tell us where you're calling from, Wadsworth.
I come from Detroit, Michigan area.
Detroit. Okay, go ahead.
I do have a comment here.
Go ahead.
And also, I have a question.
Okay.
My comment is this. How, but I want you to know how to. I want to know how to why. And my comment is this: what like I did some research about. I just researched about this black. I just researched about this. I just about the coronavirus and
okay, so you have a question. You have a comment about coronavirus?
Yeah.
Okay.
And then back in the past, I know because they trying to poison the black people back in the 40s, 50s, and I want to get some feeling about that. So are they trying to set us? Are they trying to take us out?
So you said they were trying to quarantine black people back in the 40s and 50s?
Yeah.
Okay. So what was that to do with coronavirus?
What? I mean, because they, because they had the black, because they had the black plague, and they had this. Because that's what that's what we like polio, and then they had the vaccine out.
Are you talking about reparations for black people who had to be quarantined back in the 40s and 50s?
Oh yeah.
Okay, I'm not sure about that. Yeah, I don't know about that.
You think it's gonna happen now? You think what happened back then is happening right now?
Okay. All right. Yeah, I don't know about that one, Wadsworth. But keep listening, man. Okay. Thanks for calling in. Keep listening. Okay. All right. Cool. Yeah, I don't know about that one. We ain't gonna be able to get reparations for everything. You go after the low hanging fruit. Okay, I can't stress that enough. Go after low hanging fruit because the other thing is when you have a lot of these lawsuits filed, what have you, they set a precedence, and when you lose that lawsuit, it raises the standard that has to be met for the next lawsuit trying to get reparations. Okay, let's go to Jerome. Jerome, line 3, I think it is. Hey, Jerome, thanks for holding. Welcome to the African History Network show. Tell us where you're calling from.
Thank you, sir. And lots of great information coming from you.
Thank you.
I believe that we're dropping the ball. I believe right now we need to be on the right side of the history with the truth. And the truth is, we've been miseducated. Carter G. Woodson had a book called The Miseducation of the Negro.
Yeah, 1933.
And
yes.
on the cover of it, it's what stands out to me the most, of the picture of a black person with a padlock on his brain.
Right.
Right now, we've been miseducated, and so has all of America when it comes to being on the right side of history.
Yeah, that's why I said it. That's why I said America needs a massive history lesson. Yes. Yes.
The people that stormed the Capitol were miseducated. One small bit of one lie of information made them storm the Capitol, wanting to kill, blow up, take over the White House. They were miseducated.
Right.
The officer that had his knees on George Floyd's neck was miseducated. He grew up believing that it was okay to do what he was doing. The young man on the back of the pickup truck who shot this man jogging in Georgia was miseducated to believe that it was okay for him to do that. It's time for us to be on the right side of history. And the only way for us to be on the right side of history is for our story to be etched into the curriculum of the American history.
Yeah. Yeah, that's something that
stand on the truth.
Right.
Now, talking about reparations and with the pandemic, we're dropping the ball because with reparations, we need to tell the truth. We need to redefine what happened with the truth and with all of the overwhelming evidence. And I mean overwhelming evidence.
Right.
We need to stop letting other people define our history.
Okay.
With the truth, we need to call it what it was. It was kidnapping. It was rape. It was murder. It was conspiracy and corruption from the man in the streets to the highest level of government and clergy.
Yeah,
what needs to happen is,
go ahead.
History part of it, or the evidence of it, is that there was corruption going on. It was immoral. It was wrong, and it was criminal, and it needs to be a criminal case.
Okay. All right. Thanks for calling. All right. Let's continue here. Thanks for listening. Thanks for calling. Okay. Read the article from. See, what is important for people to have to understand. We know slavery was morally wrong, but it was legal. When you go to lawmakers write law. When you go to lawmakers, you argue law. What people miss is that the international transatlantic slave trade was outlawed by the federal government when Congress passed the bill March 2nd, 1807 to abolish the international transatlantic slave trade, and it went into effect January 1st, 1808. The international transatlantic slave trade dealt with bringing in Africans into this country to enslave them. Slavery on the plantations and trading Africans as slaves, that was still legal, but bringing them into this country was illegal. All the ships that came into this country from January 1st, 1808 to June of 1860, when the Clotilda came into Alabama, all that is illegal. That's human trafficking. All that's illegal based upon federal law and their court cases to back it up. One of the most famous court cases, a movie was made about it called the Amistad. The Amistad was a U.S. Supreme Court case of 1841. So it was the immoral and rape, all that stuff was legal. Look, go after what was illegal. We don't. When you go study the Amistad case, if you go to archives.gov, they have some of the original court documents there. I've read them. The U.S. Supreme Court ruled that, when people see the movie Amistad, a lot of people don't really understand what's going on. And you see Joseph St. Q talk about give us free, give us free. The question I ask people is, why were the Africans on the Amistad slave ship, why were they set free? They weren't set free because they were kidnapped. They weren't set free because it was wrong. They were set free because it violated federal law for that ship to come into the U.S. waters. 1, 2, when those Africans were captured in Sierra Leone, it violated the treaties between the European nations at the time, because there were treaties between the European nations that abolished the international transatlantic slave trade also. So when you read the ruling from the U.S. Supreme Court, they tell you that it was illegal for those Africans to be captured in the first place. 1. 2, it was illegal for them to be brought into this country because the international transatlantic slave trade had been abolished in 1808. That's federal law. And they ruled that the Africans had a right to take up arms and fight for their freedom because there was a mutiny on the ship and they killed, a lot of the crew. Okay. There are other court cases of white men who were caught bringing Africans into this country and they were prosecuted because it's illegal. All those Africans that were brought in from January 1st, 1808 to June of 1860, the Clotilda, even when you study the case of the Clotilda, okay, they had to navigate around the U.S. ships on the U.S. waters, on the U.S. sea, things like this that were looking out for slave ships to capture them because it was illegal. And then the Africans had to hide. They had to hide them in the swamp for a few days or something like that to navigate around the authorities. When you studied the Clotilda, there was an article because we're making the wrong argument. The argument is not that it was wrong and it was immoral and it was rape and all that stuff. That stuff was legal. The argument for, we're talking about slavery, for reparations, the foundational argument is a legal argument. Is based upon Article 1, Section 9, Clause 7 of the U.S. Clause 1 of the U.S. Constitution. Article 1, Section 9, Clause 1, which led to the international transatlantic slave trade being outlawed March 2nd, 1807, the bill passed in Congress, and then going into effect January 1st, 1808. That's dealing with federal law that's rooted in the U.S. Constitution. And that was debated about abolishing the international transatlantic slave trade in 1787 at the Philadelphia Convention. And all the colonies agreed to abolish the international transatlantic slave trade except South Carolina. So they put a 20-year clause in the Constitution that stated the earliest that the international transatlantic slave trade could be abolished was 1808. That's Article 1, Section 9, Clause 1. And that's why the Africans on the Amistad slave ship were set free. But instead of us making legal arguments, we're making these other arguments. So let's go to this. Let's go to this last clip. We're going to go to clip number, Jalen. We're going to go to clip number, what the hell is that? Is that 4? Clip number 4. Clip number 4. There's no plan forward. Evanston's reparations resolution prompts debate over current proposal. Let's go to that clip. This is from ABC Channel 7 in Chicago.
And made headlines as the first city in the country to fund reparations for Black residents. But going forward, how to best use those funds has been up for debate.
Reparations are meant to close the racial wealth gap. The program that the city of Evanston is offering does not do that.
So this is an initial, tangible first step in Evanston, recognizing it's not nearly enough.
The reparations resolution was first passed nearly 2 years ago, spearheaded by 5th Ward Alderman Robin Rue Simmons and endorsed by the National African American Reparations Commission. The first initiative of the $10 million plan is the Restorative Housing Reparations Program that would distribute up to $25,000 for housing for eligible residents, with funding expected to come from a 3% tax on recreational marijuana sales.
And we proposed a use for the first $400,000 that is directly in line with both community feedback that was often around housing discrimination practices and other anti-Black housing policies.
Earlier today, Group Evanston Rejects Racist Reparations organized a demonstration calling for City Hall to take a second look at the program before voting on it this month. Demonstrators say the program as is incomplete. And while they're behind the idea of reparations, this group says a second look is needed in order to set a better nationwide precedent.
Just putting money into a loan is not true reparations.
We're leaving the door open for a lot of interpretation on what reparations actually means, and that's unacceptable.
But Alderman Rue Simmons clarifies this program is only the first step, acknowledging there is still more work ahead.
We know we're so far from perfect. We know we have a lifetime of work ahead of us, and we encourage those that are disgruntled and not satisfied to join us, because we're also not satisfied.
Okay, so read that. So with this here in Evanston, contrary to what a lot of activists are saying, all this stuff, this is the first step. But you have to get what you can legally get. And you have to also understand that you have to make sure you're on firm legal ground, because there are going to be lawsuits filed to take away what you're able to get, and you want to be able to hold it. You want to be able to hold on to it. Read this article here from Black Agenda Report. Reparations is dead. How to resurrect it. This is by Dr. Jahi Issa and Reggie Marbury. I interviewed them for 4 hours back in I think 2017 when this article came out. This came out July 12, 2017. This deals with legal arguments for reparations rooted in the U.S. Constitution based upon what I was talking about. All this, it was wrong and immoral, all that stuff. You don't go to lawmakers arguing morality. You go to lawmakers arguing law. When you go to court, you don't argue morality. You argue law. You want to talk about morality, go to church. We don't understand the difference. Yes, it was wrong and immoral, all that stuff. Those are not legal arguments. Okay? All right. Those watching on Facebook and YouTube, keep watching. Right now, we're going to keep broadcasting. We're out of time here on 910 AM Superstation. Right now, it's correct wrong behavior. It's not over till we win. We'll talk to you tomorrow night. Stay tuned for the best of Reverend Al Sharpton. All right, let's continue. We're gonna get to one more of these topics. I did 2 hours dealing with that. I've got 3 other topics to get to. We're going to get. We have to push the rest of this stuff to. We have to push the rest of this stuff to Monday night, to tomorrow, because I'm not going to have time to get through all this, but this is such a deep topic, and there's so much misunderstanding on this, and this is why a lot of these arguments on reparations. First of all, a lot of this stuff on reparations is the reason why you don't see me involved in it, because a lot of it is bullshit. Just to be honest with you, I know people mean well and all this stuff, but a lot of this stuff ain't going anywhere because they're making the wrong argument. A lot of people mean well and have good hearts, things like this. They're making the wrong argument. Now, what they're doing now what's smart about what they're doing in Evanston is that it's not based upon slavery, it's addressing redlining. This is what a lot of people don't understand. There's a difference between yelling and screaming to get something and actually putting together a logical process in place and executing the process to get what it is that you've been yelling and screaming about. That's what's so genius about what they're doing. They're doing it focusing on redlining, because redlining still exists right now. They're not doing it because of slavery. They're doing it because of redlining. All right, let's I want to go back to the main article from ABC News. Then we're going to squeeze in. Well, I don't even know if we'll be able to squeeze it. It depends upon my energy level. I only got a few hours of sleep last night, so depending upon my energy level, that'll determine how much more we get. But this is extremely, extremely important. How's everybody doing? How you all like this type of information? A lot of this information you're not going to get a whole lot of other places. I'm just telling you. All right, let's continue. Also, you can still register for the online course that I teach. Also, Ancient Kemet, the Moors, and the Ma'afa, Understanding the Transatlantic Slave Trade, what they didn't teach you in school. Ancient Kemet, the Moors, and the Ma'afa, Understanding the Transatlantic Slave Trade, what they didn't teach you in school. That is a 16-hour, 8-week online course that I teach. We deal with thousands of years of history, and we deal with what led up to the transatlantic slave trade taking place, and we deal with the 800-year occupation of Europe by the Africans known as the Moors. It's regularly $130 on sale, $80. I do the classes live Tuesdays, 8 p.m. to 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We do it online. All the sessions are recorded. You can go back and watch them over and over again. So you don't have to worry if you can't be there live in class. As soon as you register, you can go back and watch last week's class and a week before that. 2 weeks ago, our guest speaker in the class was Dr. David M. Hotep, author of the book, The First Americans Were Africans, Documented Evidence. Okay. He was our guest speaker in the class. Dr. David M. Hotep, author of the book, The First Americans Were Africans, Documented Evidence. All right, let's continue here. How you doing? And also, if you like this type of information, you can support us. $ the AHN show through Cash App. $ the AHN show through Cash App. Also through PayPal, paypal.me/the AHN show, paypal.me/the AHN show. If you do it through Cash App, be sure to type in $ the AHN show, SHOW. It's going to say Michael, and it has a picture of me there. Okay. Because somebody set up a fake African History Network Cash App account, and I'm taking action against that now. Okay, so that's not me. That's why make sure you type in $ the AHN show, and it'll say Michael, and it has my picture there, so you know it's me. Okay, let's continue. So, I want to do a little bit more with this extensive article here. But records paint a clear picture of exactly how racial inequality developed in the city. Black community members were moving through Evanston and forming black pockets in the city of Evanston. Local historian Dino Robinson said, it caused the white community to start panicking, like, what do we do about this? Articles, reports, and studies were conducted on the black community to discuss what should be done. And Evanston, like many cities across the country, embraced the practice of redlining. Redlining was a federal project to determine the market values of areas and neighborhoods, historian Dino Robinson said. Quote, there were 4 categories, A being the highly desired area, D, the lowest value properties. The D areas were usually relegated to the African American community. D was always in red. In Evanston, black residents were moved into a triangle-shaped area that became the 5th Ward, deliberately segregating them from white families, sought after property and ultimately wealth. In Evanston, African American residents were moved into a triangle-shaped area that became the 5th Ward, deliberately segregating them from white families, sought after property, and ultimately wealth. See, the strategy that they chose is a brilliant strategy. Instead of trying to get reparations for slavery, and chattel slavery ended 156 years ago, then you're going to have to deal with all these people saying, my ancestors didn't own slaves. My ancestors just got here last generation, 2 generations ago, all that stuff. You can deal with redlining that's still taking place right now, and redlining was created by the federal government. This is understanding how to pick your battles and how to make your arguments, how to make your legal arguments. That's why what they're doing is so brilliant. People were expecting them to go this direction, try and get reparations for slavery. They said, no, we're going to deal with redlining. The most important thing is to get something tangible. Okay? Not to just keep having protests. The most important thing is to get something tangible. So, let's go back to this. Okay, right here. Then I'm going to show you this article from blackpast.org that deals with some of the history of redlining. Okay. And then there's an article that I dealt with a few years ago dealing with redlining. And it was from National Public Radio, NPR.org. A forgotten history of how the U.S. government segregated America. Okay, so you ain't dealing with something 156 years ago. We're dealing with something in the last few decades. That's what's so brilliant about what they did. In Evanston, Black residents were moved into a triangle-shaped area that became the Fifth Ward, deliberately segregating them for white families, sought after property, and ultimately wealth. The Fifth Ward was bordered by what was then a sewage canal on one side and far removed from public transportation in the city's downtown. According to Dino Robinson's report, homes in the area had smaller lot sizes, and at the time, many had no electricity, water, or sewers. Okay? You're dealing with sanitation issues, you're dealing with health issues, hygiene. Okay? Many had no electricity, water, or sewers. Quote, the only option to buy in Evanston was basically in the Fifth Ward. Banks in Evanston would not loan the black families for banks in Evanston would not loan to black families for housing, and the real estate agencies would not show you anything other than the Fifth Ward. Okay, so that's steering. That steering, if you read this book here, How White Folks Got So Rich, The Untold Story of American White Supremacy. You read How White Folks Got So Rich, The Untold Story of American White Supremacy. This lays out all the laws and policies, well, a lot of the large laws and policies going back hundreds of years that maldistributed wealth, power, and resources into the hands of Europeans. And redlining was one of them. It talked about steering, how real estate agents would steer African-American prospective home buyers to African-American communities and steer them away from white communities. Okay, show them houses in African-American communities, not in white communities, even though you may not, even though you don't have signs that said white only, things like that. It was steering that was taking place. Okay, and then redlining played a role when it came to getting bank loans for the houses and loans from the Federal Housing Act of about 1949, and then trying to get and then when you're trying to also get bank loans through, you trying to take advantage of the GI Bill of 1944. Okay, there was a big article from history.com. This one right here. I've done a whole show. I've done a whole broadcast dealing with this one right. This bill. This article here from history.com. But go read this one. I don't have time to really get into it, but I want you to know it's there. I'm gonna go find that broadcast I did on this and re-air this. This thing is deep. This deals with laws and policies. Politics is the legal distribution of scarce wealth, power, and resources, and the writing of laws, statutes, ordinances, amendments, and treaties, their adoption, interpretation, and enforcement. The name of this article is called How the GI Bill's Promise Was Denied to 1 Million Black World War II Veterans. How the GI Bill's promise was denied to 1 million Black World War II veterans. This is from September 30th, 2019, from history.com, which is the official website of the History Channel. And it goes through, and they start out talking about Eugene Burnett, an African-American man named Eugene Burnett, who's a World War II veteran. He's a World War II veteran. And they talk about how when Eugene Burnett saw the when he wanted to purchase a house, he was looking at purchasing a house in Levittown, New York. And it was 1949, and he was ready to settle down in a larger home with his family. The newly established Long Island suburb seemed like the perfect place to begin their post-war life, okay, for he and his wife. One that he hoped would be improved with the help of the GI Bill. a piece of sweeping legislation aimed at helping World War II veterans like Eugene Burnett prosper after war. But when he spoke with a salesman about buying the house using a GI Bill guaranteed mortgage, the door to suburban life in Levittown slammed firmly in his face. The suburb was not open to Black residents. Burnett's wife, Bernice, said it was as though it wasn't real. Look at this house. Can you imagine having this? And then for them to tell me, because of the color of my skin, that I can't be part of it. Now, the Burnetts were not the only Black Americans for whom the promise of the GI Bill turned out to be an illusion. Though the GI Bill helped white Americans prosper and accumulate wealth in the post-war years, it did not deliver on that promise for veterans of color, specifically African Americans. It did not deliver on that promise for veterans of color in general. Yes, some of them take advantage of it, but a lot of us are going to be discriminated against and can't take advantage of the benefits that we earned and our taxpayer dollars are financing, subsidizing. In fact, the wide disparity in the bill's implementation ended up driving growing gaps in wealth, education, and civil rights between whites and Black Americans. The GI Bill, if you go back to the hearing on reparations that took place in the 116th Congress, because we're in the 117th Congress now, the 116th Congress, June 19th, 2019, in the House of Representatives, Dr. Julian Malveaux, who I've had on this show before, Dr. Julian Malveaux, she's an economist. She's actually an economist. She has a PhD in economics. She testified, and you can watch it on C-SPAN. She talked about how one of the bills in like the last 100 years, pieces of legislation that have exacerbated the racial wealth gap has been the GI Bill. And this is what this deals with. And that's from the federal government. And then that ties into redlining, which takes us to Evanston, Illinois. And the reparations that they're dealing with is addressing redlining as opposed to chasing slavery, as opposed to trying to do reparations for slavery. Because you ain't, dude, come on, that ain't going to happen. Like that. Oh, they were smart to deal with redlining to try to get something tangible to help African Americans there. All right, let's continue. So, in fact, the wide disparity in the bill's implementation ended up helping drive growing gaps in wealth, education, and civil rights between white and Black Americans. While the GI Bill's language did not specifically exclude African American veterans from its benefits, it was structured in a way that ultimately shut doors for the 1.2 million Black veterans who had bravely served their country during World War II in segregated ranks. Okay, so read the rest of this article here because I don't have time to, I didn't even intend to bring that up. But since we talked about this, it's important for me to show you this. Enter this in as evidence. Okay, that's exhibit F. All right. Let's go back to the one from ABC News. These other stories, I may squeeze in. I may be able to squeeze in Bloody Sunday, 56th anniversary of Bloody Sunday. We may squeeze that in. The rest of the stuff we'll talk about tomorrow on tomorrow's show. Okay, here we go. So in the late 1940s, the city of Evanston, Illinois, also demolished some homes belonging to Black families that were outside of the Fifth Ward, or physically took them from their foundations and moved them into the red-lined boundaries. Oh, you remember on Sanford and Son, the episode where the Japanese were coming to buy up all the houses on the block. And Fred was holding out for more money. So then Fred had so then they were invited to Japanese dinner with Miss Funai and her uncle or grandfather, something like that. The old Japanese with the long beard. And the grandfather said that he didn't want to uproot Fred from his roots because they meant so much to him. And Fred said, "Uproot me, man. Let's get to uprooting. Come on, uproot me." Right? This is what they did here. They uprooted them. Okay. All right. So the historic redlining impacts our community today. The historic redlining impacts our community today, Ruth Simmons, a Fifth Ward alderman, said. That map still is the map of our concentrated Black community, our disinvestment, our inferior infrastructure. Today, white people in Evanston, Illinois make nearly double the income and double the home value of their Black neighbors, according to the most recent U.S. Census. This racial wealth gap is prevalent nationally, with Black Americans possessing less than 15% of the wealth that white Americans have, according to the Federal Reserve 2019 survey of consumer finances. Black residents who live through redlining in Evanston and their descendants are eligible for reparations. That includes 98-year-old Benjamin Gaines Sr. and his son, Benjamin Gaines Jr. The Gaines family moved to Evanston in 1959. Okay, read the rest of this here, just for the sake of time. I don't have time to get through the rest of this. This is an extensive article. This is, I mean, what they're doing is fantastic. And I want to see other cities do this and make sure you're on a strong legal foundation. How the first U.S. city to fund reparations for Black residents is making amends. Up to $25,000 per eligible resident for housing will be distributed this year. Okay, this is from March 1st, 2021, ABC News. Ashley Brown, Emily DeSant, Marsfield, and Ali Yang. Great reporting, great journalism here. Now, quickly here, if we look at redlining, this is an excellent article from blackpast.org. Blackpast.org has about 6,000 pages of articles dealing with African history, African American history. So I do a lot of research at blackpast.org. You can support them also. They accept donations. They need donations. They need your support. This is redlining 1937. Redlining refers to a discriminatory pattern of disinvestment and obstructive lending practices that act as an impediment to home ownership among African Americans and other people of color. Banks use the concept to deny loans to homeowners and would-be homeowners who lived in these neighborhoods. This in turn resulted in neighborhood economic decline and the withholding of services of their provision at an exceptionally high cost. The origin of the term stems from the policies developed by the Homeowners Loan Corporation. The HOLC, the Homeowners Loan Corporation, created in 1933 by the Franklin Roosevelt administration to reduce home foreclosures. This was federal policy. Okay, this is during the Great Depression. And then it was institutionalized by the 1937 U.S. Housing Act, which established the Federal Housing Association, the FHA, the Federal Housing Association. Federal housing agencies, including the Homeowners Loan Corporation and the FHA, determined whether areas, federal housing agencies, including the Homeowners Loan Corporation and the FHA, determined whether areas were deemed unfit for investment by banks, insurance companies, savings and loans associations, and other financial services companies. The areas were physically demarcated with red shading on a map. In contrast, zones which were to receive preferential lending status were marked in green shading, and intermediate areas in blue shading. Often, these decisions were arbitrarily based on the area's racial composition rather than income levels. Often, these decisions were arbitrarily based on the area's racial composition rather than income levels. Now, see, once again, see what's so brilliant about what they did in Evanston is that they went after redlining as opposed to slavery, because they still have people in Evanston who were discriminated against due to redlining, who are alive. All the people who survived slavery, chattel slavery that ended in 1865, all those people are dead. The last known slaves died in the 1950s. Harriet Tubman died in 1913. Frederick Douglass died in 1895. Booker T. Washington died in 1915. There were former slaves interviewed in the 1940s, and they've got the interviews. If you read the study that I talk about all the time, and we'll deal with Mississippi. We have to deal with that tomorrow night. It's just too much. Teaching Hard History, American Slavery. Teaching Hard History, American Slavery from the Southern Poverty Law Center. If you look at page 10, because I downloaded this study, took it to the printer, and got it printed. I teach from this. In the 1930s and 40s, the Works Progress Administration and Farm Security Administration photographed the daily lives of thousands of formerly enslaved people, tenant farmers, and sharecroppers. This is the 1930s and 40s. This photograph of a woman born in enslavement was taken in Greensboro, Alabama, 1941. This is a former slave right here. They interviewed them. Okay, the last known slaves died in the 1950s. But you got people that are still alive today, like this brother Gaines, who's 98, who was a victim of redlining. So they're going after low-hanging fruit. That makes sense. That's what you're supposed to do. So read this. See, this is what I'm saying. You had former slaves interviewed by the federal government. This was the Works Progress Administration. They were interviewed in the 1930s and 40s. Okay? But all of them are dead. All right. So often these decisions were arbitrarily based on the area's racial composition rather than income levels. While the practice was almost universal before 1968, the Civil Rights Act passed that year. So they're talking about the Fair Housing Act of 1968, another Civil Rights Act. The Civil Rights Act passed that year theoretically outlawed redlining. Nonetheless, its impact was felt long after that date. In a series of Pulitzer Prize-winning articles, which appeared in 1988 under the title The Color of Money, Atlanta Journal-Constitution reporter Bill Detman described how Atlanta, Georgia banks still discriminated by the racial designation of neighborhoods. In 1988, this story from the Atlanta Journal-Constitution described how The Color of Money described how Atlanta, Georgia banks still discriminated by the racial designation of neighborhoods. His article illustrated how these banks were nearly twice as likely to lend to homeowners and prospective home buyers in low-income white neighborhoods as in affluent black areas. Read the rest of this read the rest of this article dealing with the history of redlining from blackpast.org. Okay, blackpast.org. Now, there was a article from 2017 from National Public Radio, NPR.org. And I talked about this story when it came out on my radio show. It's called A Forgotten History of How the U.S. Government Segregated America. A Forgotten History of How the U.S. Government Segregated America. May 3rd, 2017. May 3rd, 2017. Federal housing policies created after the Depression ensured that African Americans and other people of color were left out of the new suburban communities and pushed instead into urban housing projects such as Detroit's Brewster Douglas Towers. In 1933, faced with a housing shortage, the federal government began a program explicitly designed to increase and segregate America's housing stock. Author Richard Rothstein says the housing programs begun under the New Deal were tantamount to a state-sponsored system of segregation. The government's efforts were primarily designed to provide housing to white middle-class, lower middle-class families, he says. African Americans and other people of color were left out of the new suburban communities and pushed instead into urban housing projects. Richard Rothstein's new book, The Color of Law, examines the local, state, and federal housing policies that mandated segregation. He notes that the Federal Housing Administration, the FHA, the Federal Housing Administration, which was established in 1934, furthered the segregation efforts by refusing to insure mortgages in and near African American neighborhoods, a policy known as redlining. At the same time, the FHA was subsidizing builders who were mass producing entire subdivisions for whites with the requirement that none of the homes be sold to African Americans. Okay, that's restrictive covenants. Restrictive covenants. It was written into the deeds that these white homeowners could not sell their homes to African Americans. Now, that was illegal, but they were still doing it and get away with it, just like it was illegal to keep bringing Africans to this country from January 1st, 1808 to 1860, but they kept doing it anyway. Read the rest of this article. A Forgotten History of How the U.S. Government Segregated America. Okay, this is from NPR.org, National Public Radio. And then there was the follow-up article. I shared the clip from it, but it's from ABC Channel 7 in Chicago. So you can read the rest of this article here. There's no plan going forward. Evanston's reparations resolution prompts debate over current proposal. Once again, what they're doing in Evanston is brilliant. And they're actually see their goal is to actually get something tangible as opposed to just keep protesting. That's why they went after redlining as opposed to slavery. Let's see here. Okay, here we go. It is. There's no. Let me close this out. Okay. There's no plan going forward. Evanston's reparations resolution prompts debate over current proposal. That's from March 6th, 2021. From ABC abc7chicago.com, abc7chicago.com. All right, so check that out also. Okay, switching gears here. There was, we know, March 7th, 2021 is the 56th anniversary of Bloody Sunday. We'll probably talk some more about this on our Monday show. For the first time in 56 years, they're commemorating Bloody Sunday without John Lewis. You know, John Lewis passed away in June of 2020. Also, this is the first time they're having this commemoration without Reverend C.T. Vivian as well. Okay, without Reverend C.T. Vivian. So let's see here. Senate pass. There was this article. Where I put it? Let me bring up this article here from National Public Radio. There's also one from newsone.com as well. Dealing with the anniversary of Bloody Sunday, and this is the first time that they're commemorating this without John Lewis. Okay, let's pull this up here. So this weekend marks 56 years since civil rights marchers were attacked by Alabama state troopers on a day known as Bloody Sunday. The annual commemoration will be different this year. There's a pandemic, as we all know. A new president, and perhaps most notably, one missing voice, that of John Lewis. Now, on March 7th, 1965, the late John Lewis and other civil rights leaders led a march from Selma to Montgomery to demonstrate for voting rights. While crossing onto the Edmund Pettus Bridge, the peaceful demonstrators, including Representative John Lewis, were brutally beaten by police. It was just one episode across a decade-long fight for racial justice that began in a violent Jim Crow era South, in which John Lewis risked his life championing freedom. Okay, so they talk about this here. The civil rights icon and congressman who on that bloody Sunday had his skull cracked by state troopers died at age 80 in July after suffering from advanced stage pancreatic cancer. We know we also lost Reverend C.T. Vivian as well. Reverend also, so this commemoration takes place without Reverend C.T. Vivian. Now, they discussed this on MSNBC today, and I want to go to that clip here. I have to pull it up myself since we're not on 910 now. Also, this ties into, we'll talk about it tomorrow night. Joe Biden signed a executive order on March 7th, an executive order that expands voting access. So at a time when Republicans have 253 bills in 43 state legislatures across the country, okay, to restrict voting access, you have Joe Biden signed this executive order to expand voting rights. There are also about 700 bills that Democrats have across the country in state legislatures to expand voting rights also. Okay, let's go to this clip here. Just 1 second here. All right, just a second. Let's go to this clip.
By the late Congressman John Lewis, President Biden is set to sign an executive order aimed at leveraging federal resources to expand access to voting. It comes on the 56th anniversary of Bloody Sunday, when 600 peaceful protesters marched across the Edmund Pettus Bridge in Selma, Alabama. They were led by the late Congressman John Lewis, urging for the passage of the Voting Rights Act before being met with violence from white police officers. The president this morning noting now, even half a century later, despite all the progress made, the fight for voting rights for all Americans is still an ongoing battle.
The legacy of the March in Selma is that while nothing can stop free people from exercising their most sacred power as a citizen, there are those who will do anything they can to take that power away.
And joining me now, Congresswoman Terry Sewell, a Democrat from Alabama. I believe from Selma specifically, right? That's home.
It is. It's my hometown. Welcome to my hometown. You know, today is the 56th anniversary of the Bloody Sunday, and the temerity, the audacity of ordinary Americans standing up and making our country live up to its ideals of equality and justice for all. It's been a bittersweet day for me. It is the first time in my lifetime that John Lewis has not been here on this day. You know, John and those foot soldiers would come back year after year after year. I'm not only in my hometown of Selma, but I'm also a lifelong member of the historic Brown Chapel AME Church here in Selma, which is where the marchers gathered before they left from Selma to Montgomery. So as a little child singing in the choir, I would see C.T. Vivian, Joseph Laurie, John Lewis, Coretta Scott King, and now one by one, they're all disappearing. But I think it's really important upon us who are beneficiaries, direct beneficiaries of the movement, to pick up their baton and carry it on.
Look, they are disappearing. But as you said, there's you, and you are definitely perpetuating this fight, this struggle. Yeah. You mentioned John Lewis. I want to take a listen to something that he said 6 years ago in 2015 at the 50th anniversary of Bloody Sunday. Take a look at this.
People often ask me, why do you come back? What purpose does it serve? We come to Selma to be renewed. We come to be inspired. We come to be reminded that we must do the work that justice and equality calls us to do.
If he were here today, what do you think his message would be?
I think his message would be the same message, that we must never give up. We must never give in. We must keep our eyes on the prize. You know, I never thought that the cause for which John Lewis and Hosea Williams bludgeoned on a bridge, as John would say, you know, he shed a little blood on the bridge in Selma for the equal right to vote. But I never thought that I would 56 years later, be the member of Congress representing Selma, Alabama. And now their cause is my cause too. Congressional action is what is required in order to put the full enforcement provisions back into the BRA. So old battles have become new again. And I think that it's important that those tactics, those same strategies, that we exercise them now today.
Let's go now to Alabama, everyone. That's where a group of Democratic lawmakers.
Okay. So that was from Weekends with Alex Witt from March 7th, 2021. Biden marks Bloody Sunday by signing voting rights order. We'll talk more about this on Monday's show. Here's the link to that video. Here's the link to that clip. You can watch it in its entirety. Okay. So we'll deal with all this. You know, I had a full show. I didn't plan to do that long dealing with reparations, but as we got deeper into it, you know, we had some callers and things like this, and I'm thinking about more information and more articles. But the entire 2-hour show, I had laid out all the topics, all the supporting documentation, all the time. I had all that laid out, and I had backup stuff as well. You know, got this stack over here. America has tried reparations before. Here's how I went. A whole bunch of articles then with reparations. I have all that stuff. So tomorrow's show is laid out, so I don't have to worry about that for tomorrow. The whole show's laid out. I got the segments from Roland Martin Unfiltered already edited, all that stuff. We got all that everything. Economist who says racism cost the U.S. $16 trillion explains the math. CBS News dealing with the study from Citigroup that the U.S. economy has lost $16 trillion over the past 20 years, from 2020 to 2020, from 2000 to 2020, because of racism. Okay, all that's all laid out for tomorrow. So I'll be working on editing. I'll be working on producing commercials for advertisers and all that other stuff, shipping out orders, everything. Register for my online course, Ancient Kemet, the Moors, and the Ma'afa, Understanding the Transatlantic Slave Trade, what they didn't teach you in school. This is a 8-week, 16-hour online course that I teach. We deal with thousands of years of history, and we deal with what led up to the transatlantic slave trade taking place. Okay, so we're in the part now where we're dealing with the history of the Moors in Europe. And when we deal with the transatlantic slave trade, we can't start talking about it during slavery. We can't start in the 15th century. We have to deal with thousands of years of history leading up to the transatlantic slave trade happening. And we have to deal with that 800-year occupation in Europe of the Africans known as the Moors. They're taking the teachings from ancient Kemet, ancient Egypt into Europe, and this is bringing Europe out of the Dark Ages. Okay, so this class is regularly $130. It's on sale $80. We do it normally Tuesdays, 8 p.m. to 10 p.m. 8 p.m. to 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We do it online. We do the classes live. I'm doing a PowerPoint presentation. We have video clips, book references, articles. There's about 50 articles that I reference. All the sessions are recorded. You can go back and watch it over and over again. Okay, so if you miss it, you can go back and watch it. You can watch from around the world. You can use this with your children also. And this is one of the, I would say it's PG-13, like 12, 13 and up. This is one of the sources that I use to study teaching hard history of American slavery. This is one of the many sources that I use. And we have a good time, and people learn. So you can visit our website, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. Right on the homepage of our website. As soon as you register, you can start watching the content. We have content on demand. All the classes are recorded. If you miss them live, you can go back and watch them over and over again. There's also bonus content there as well. And I'm uploading more bonus content also. We still have the 15 DVD bundle pack, the Black History Month, the Michael M. Hotep Black History Month 15 DVD bundle pack. Includes 15 of my lectures. The DVD lectures we have in digital download format also. So that's on sale $100. That's at AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. I'm still shipping out more of those. We'll post this link here. And it's right on the homepage of our website, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. Okay. So when you go to our website, and let me flip on the screen share. Go to our website and scroll down. You have information for the radio show here. You can click here to listen to audio podcasts of our shows, because I'll upload podcasts daily. So click here to listen to audio podcasts of our shows. This is information for the online course. Okay, Ancient Kemet, the Moors, and the Ma'afa, Understanding the Transatlantic Slave Trade, what they didn't teach you in school. All right, so our next class is coming up this Tuesday. Click right here to register here for the online course. It takes you to the next page. Click right here to enroll and go through the process, and it'll go ahead and process the payment. And then you can start watching the content right away. You keep scrolling down our website. I was a guest panelist for Zeta Phi Beta Sorority Incorporated, my sisters. The Zetas, Lambda Rho Zeta Chapter. My niece Chris Jackson asked me to be on the panel. So I'm a member of Phi Beta Sigma Fraternity Incorporated. Those are our sisters. That was Wednesday, February 24th. I need to take that down. And then right here we have the 15 DVD bundle pack, Michael M. Hotep Black History Month 15 DVD bundle pack. That's me in a suit some years ago. That picture. And click right here, order here. Takes you to the next page, shows all the DVDs that are all the titles. 3 of them dealing with the film Black Panther. We have one dealing with the real history of African American History Month. We have lectures dealing with Dr. King, Malcolm X, First Americans were Africans, documented evidence, economic empowerment, great Black women and great African women in history, the mothers of civilization. We know this is Women's History Month. Great African women in history, the mothers of civilization. And there were some well-known and not so well-known African women in our history from all different time periods. And you know, this one here deals with the real history of the Tuskegee experiment of untreated syphilis on the Negro male. No, they did not inject them with syphilis. I'm so sick and tired of people saying that urban myth. No, there were 600 men in the study. 399 of the men had an early form of syphilis called latent syphilis, where you have syphilis, but you don't have any symptoms. 201 men in the study were the control group. They did not have syphilis. The men who had syphilis were denied treatment even after penicillin became the treatment for syphilis. No, they did not inject them with syphilis. I don't know where the hell people got that stuff from. Probably from the same, you probably got it from the same people who told you about the Willie Lynch letter of 1712, because that was a fraud also. Willie Lynch never historically existed either. Okay, so the Willie Lynch letter has been proven to be a fraud. So I don't know where people get this stuff from. But anyway, great African women in history, the mothers of civilization. So you can buy these in a bundle pack or individually. And this one right here, I mean, this presentation right here, Ancient Kemet, the Winter Solstice and the History of Christmas, deals with the pre-Christian origin, the pre-Christian celebrations, winter solstice celebrations that are going to be incorporated into Christmas. And we tie into ancient Egypt, and it's a deep presentation. Ancient Kemet, the Winter Solstice and the History of Christmas. So that is all part of this 15 DVD bundle pack, the Michael M. Hotel Black History Month DVD bundle pack. Even though African American History Month is actually over with, our history continues each year. It's 365. So that is something good to keep you busy for a long time. Okay, so that's at our website, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. We have a lot of other good information there. We have a book list of about 70 books, recommended reading, about 70 books. All my DVD lectures and digital downloads are at our website, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. And we just posted the link here to that bundle pack also. Okay, so check that out. All right, look, we had to get out of here. Remember, at the African History Network, we focus on educating, empowering, and inspiring people of African descent throughout the diaspora and around the world, because right now it corrects wrong behavior. It's not over till we win. Wakanda forever. And we'll talk to you tomorrow night. Peace. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks for hanging in with us.